Hello everyone, my name is Mouse Tutorial and today I'm going to show you how to set up your config file. Now setting up your config file is always useful because the user can then choose the block IDs and the item IDs, which is really good because that will make sure that your game doesn't crash because of multiple block IDs, copying of block IDs. So to do this I will need to change a few things, because if I open up my new block, I have set my new block name manually. I don't want to do that. I want to have a central class that I can change, and so this will change as well. So what I want to do is delete this and create a new class inside the lib for package. So call that strings, and that's gonna hold the names. So public static final string new block underscore name is going to be equal to new block. Wow, there we go. So if I go back now, I can just type strings dot new block. Make sure you import the right one, because otherwise it will mess up and not work. Now one more thing that I'm worried about is this. That is the default ID, and I don't want to use this because we cannot use a config file to change this. So delete that and create a new class called block IDs. And again, that's in a lib package. Now what we want is we want two variables: public static final int new block ID default. So this is going to be the default ID. Let's make it this number. Why not? If my Eclipse works, 4096. And we want another one: public static int new block ID. So this is what we are going to do. We're going to use this as default ID, but we can change that ID in the config file, and that will use this, and that will save it in this variable, so new block ID. And that's what we want to use right here. So we want to use block ID dot new block ID, not the default one. That's not going to change, but this one is changeable in the config. So save everything, and now we can start on our config. Now in order to start loading the config, we need to create a handler which is gonna handle the config. So configuration handler, and we're gonna create a method called init. Now we need to create that configuration handler, and I like to do that in com.martijn.top/configuration. Create a new package for that, but that's your own choice. Hit finish. Now what we want to do in this configuration file, configuration handler, is we want to create a field, public static configuration config, and now we want to create that method that we are calling in our main class, the init. So public static void init, and this needs a file to work, so just give it a file right now. What we want to do now is we want to set that config equal to new configuration, and we want to give it a default like this. Now import everything because it's getting a mess, just like that. Okay, so what we're going to try in our config file is to load the config. If that works, great. If it doesn't, load. Wow, errors everywhere. Oh yeah. And if that doesn't work, we want to catch an error. And we want to catch exception E. Now what we want to do is we want to log that, and what logging means is type it in the console. we want to make sure that the console says that it has an error. So fml log.log. Now we need to select a level, and I'm gonna type severe because it's a pretty darn hot warning, pretty severe error. Now give it a exception, so I'm gonna give it E, and the data is gonna be reference .modid plus has a problem loading the config file, or something like that. So what we finally want to do is we want to save the config, so config.save. Okay, so this is what our mod needs to be doing, what our config file needs to be doing. Now what we want to do is create that changeable ID. So what we're going to do is say block IDs dot new block ID is equal to config dot get, and now you have to choose if you have an item, an ID, block, or whatever. And since I have a block and not a string or int or boolean or whatever, I'm going to choose block. Now the key is going to be strings dot new block name, and again this is why I created that central class that handles all the strings. And the default ID is going to be block IDs dot new block ID default. Now the only thing we need to add is get int, and that is going to get block IDs dot new block default, just like that. Now save it. The last thing that we need to do is it needs a file, but we haven't told it that this thing needs a file, so give it a file, new file. Okay, but now we need to say what is the location of the file. Now in order to do this I have to do something again, sorry for that. I need to create something in my references. So public static final string channel name, that's going to be equal to mod ID. Wow. Okay, now we need to give it the channel name right here at the network mod. Channels is equal to reference dot channel name. Okay, so now we can use that. That's great. Okay, so new file. Now what we want to do is we want to get the location where the config file should be. So we want to type event, and that's what I gave it right here. Dot get mod configuration directory, and we want to get absolute path. Path, not file, path. Okay. Now what we want to add is a file.separator. In this case that's a /. Now we want to add reference dot channel name and another file separator. And we want to type reference dot mod ID, and we want to say dot config. Okay. So again, if I open up, no, that's not the right one, my workspace, Eclipse, no, sorry, MCP, jars, config. So this is where the absolute path is, config. Now we want to go into our channel, which is TOP. And now I want to create a config file called modid, which is top.config. Okay, so that should be fine. Let's save everything and see if we have no errors. Okay, we have not. So let's run it and see how that works. So as you can see, it created a new folder and a new file called top.config. And there is something wrong with my mod ID, but I'll fix that in a bit. Let's see what the console says. Ooh, errors. Is it a too high number? I think so. So let's change that down a bit. I'm pretty sure if I type 50 it will automatically change to a right number that does work, and I forgot to save it. So I want to delete the config file really quick to make sure that it works again, and run it again. It should recreate the config file. You just have to play with what value you put in. So let's now open up our config file, and it skipped a few 4,000 blocks because Forge likes to do that so that the block IDs are not messed up and stuff with the vanilla blocks. But we could also change this number and it would change in game. So that's really great. Now you can also do this for items and everything that you want. But that's how I like to do this. I hope you liked it, and I hope you use this method. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more tutorials. Like this video if you want to... Like this video if you enjoyed it and if you now know how to make a config file. And maybe I'll see you next time. I hope I'll see you next time. So this was Smel's tutorial over.